just going to give it a moment for some attendees to populate.
Hi, everybody who's coming in. Can't see you, but we know you're there. I see some familiar names. So nice to see you, sort of.
Be in your presence.
Yeah, glad you're here. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so we're going to start this session as the Georgian College Alumni Association always starts our webinars with the Georgian College Indigenous Land Acknowledgement. So Georgian College acknowledges that all campuses are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabeg people. The Anishinaabeg include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. Georgian College is dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us for our session today, the Business Industry Networking panel with our panelists, Maria Artuso and Shannon O'Connell. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Just to give you a little bit of background on our panelists today, Shannon O'Connell, she completed her BA HR program in 2014 and was twice nominated for Co-op Student of the Year during her time at Georgian.
Nominated but didn't win. It's like being nominated for an Oscar. You're still very honored. So I thought I would share that with you all today.
You got the like DiCaprio vibes.
Yes.
Also, she almost got to work for me as a co-op student, but unfortunately,
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Was scooped up by another department because she's such a great candidate. So there you go.
So
Thank you, Beth.
Great to have you on the call today. You also currently sit on the HR Advisory Board Committee for the HR program at Georgian College. So very engaged. Shannon graduated from Georgian and turned her focus to recruitment and HR support for a number of companies in Barrie before relocating to Hamilton in 2016. For the past 4.5 years, Shannon's worked with L3 Harris, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, a U.S. defense contractor based in Burlington, Ontario, who provides advanced defense commercial technologies across air, land, sea, space, and cyber domains all around the world. In Shannon's role, she's responsible for onboarding, employee engagement, change management, and employee immigration and mobility. Shannon is a designated relocation specialist with the Canadian Employee Relocation Council. Oh, that's a mouthful.
Or
and is
CERC,
currently
you could
attending.
say CERC, yeah.
CERC, oh.
Yep, that's easier.
And is currently attending Seneca College for employee mobility and relocation. Continuous learning, love it. Shannon's a proud mom of a 10-year-old daughter, Penelope, who just had a baby when she attended, who's just a baby when you attended Georgian.
I was like, she didn't have a baby.
Yeah, wait a minute. And you like to spend time camping, cooking, gardening, and watching RuPaul.
Yes.
And now Maria is the community manager for Milton, Ontario, RBC, overseeing 4 branches, 100 employees and partners collectively. She's been with RBC Royal Bank for 23 years and has had the privilege of working in a variety of platforms and lines of businesses throughout her career. Maria is an advocate of volunteering in her community, supports financial literacy programs through junior achievement, and is a board of director member on alma mater boards. She strongly believes in lifelong learning and as an opportunity for continuing to pay it forward. Maria also sits on the Alumni Association Executive Council. So thank you guys so much. Sorry, I'm getting like a lot of thunder behind me, so I apologize because I'm only half hearing myself. On behalf of the Alumni Association and Co-op, I want to welcome everybody to attend, and I'm going to hand it over to Beth to begin our session.
Well, welcome everyone. It's really great to have you all here. I just wanted to share a couple of housekeeping items. So I see a student just said they weren't able to mute themselves. So Erin can mute everyone except for us. I just hope that Erin can mute everyone except for us. So if you have a question, please just put it into the chat, and then Erin or I will capture it and make sure that we ask so you don't miss anything. If you haven't already done it, students, open up your project template, because the questions in part 2 will be the questions that I'll be asking our panelists today. So if you can put in the chat which program you're in, that way I can make sure if there's anyone who's not in business administration, I see there's at least 1 or 2 office administration students, then I'll pull out some questions from your learning outcomes as well to help you complete your project. However, if you're still finding that you have questions after today's session, then you can still continue to reach. If you haven't already filled in a form requesting a one-to-one match from Erin, then you still can do that. But we will try to answer questions. We've got Office Admin and Business in the chat right now. Okay, and then we'll do our best with these, the time that we have to answer as many questions as we can. So I'm just gonna get started. I'm just seeing 2 students have put in what programs they're from. So if you are from a program that's not business or Office Admin, please put it in the chat for us. Okay, so Shannon, I'm not seeing any HR students.
That's okay.
We'll ask you some business questions. So I'm going to start by just asking each of you to answer this, and we'll start with Maria. How did your company adjust to the changes it needed to make during the COVID-19 pandemic? What kind of new practices and protocols were put in place to assist with productivity?
Thanks, Beth. I think, and good afternoon, everyone. Really great to be here. I think I'll start with adjustment to changes were mostly on the fly. I'd have to tell you, I would say that there was a lot of care that was provided, ensuring that employees were safe and healthy first and foremost. And given the nature of our company, that our clients also stayed safe and healthy. So I'd say that was the riding sort of priorities, and then other things followed. So I'd say there was a lot of agility and flexibility. So we tried things that didn't stick and they weren't working, and we had to kind of go back and try new things. We didn't have all the answers. And so I'd say the adjustment is actually getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, not having all the answers to things. And so it was a lot of living in gray, which for type A personalities or individuals who love black and white and, like definitive answers, it was difficult. And then I would say the other piece, which I think in previous years, we would say, oh my goodness, over communication, like stop already. But what it did do is it kept everybody in the loop. And there was a real appreciation from employees that, here's what we're doing and here's why we're doing it. And it was daily, it was weekly, there was a lot of over communication. And so I'd say there was, the adjustments to the changes were done with a lot of care, compassion, and empathy, and it was for employees and clients to start with. And then I'd say to your second question around new practices and protocols in place to assist with productivity, there was a real emphasis. The organization had shared that we were, just because we had to come to the table with a lot of new enhancements in technology and digital and video conferencing and just, getting information out to clients, employees as quickly as possible, so that people could still continue to live, do, and that sort of thing. The new practices is really, we're probably about 5 years ahead of where we would ever have been should COVID not have been a thing. And so, the real practice management in there is digital enablement and empowerment of our clients, and just how we do business is probably paramount across the entire organization, regardless of where you sit globally, and where you sit in terms of a business or a function, or just depending on what the role is. So I'd probably say those would be the items for those 2 questions.
And I'm muted. Shannon, would you like to answer with, or would you like me to repeat the question for you?
If you could, that would be great.
Sure.
Yeah,
No
thank you.
problem. So how did your company adjust to the changes it needed to make during the COVID-19 pandemic? And what kind of new practices and protocols were put in place to assist with productivity?
I will, again, I'm going to be transparent, just like Maria, and say like, it was a bit of a mess. Like it was, a lot of information coming out from the media and different things coming out from US media, and don't forget we're a US company. So our corporate response was a little bit different than what was happening up here in Canada with our government and our provincial response and federal response. So there was a lot of confusion, I would say, at the beginning. It took probably a couple of weeks to adjust to, things like wearing masks and telling employees like, hey, like you can't sit beside each other, like you can't stand next to each other. And so, there was that whole kind of change management in the sense of like, just how you go about your day to day, how you interact with people. People were still going into the office at the beginning when it wasn't, as prevalent in Canada. And then slowly we just started kind of seeing a little bit more anxiety around the office, and especially like even in my department, some coworkers that I had were a lot more nervous than others, and having family members at home that maybe, so they maybe started working from home a bit sooner. My organization is not one that allowed people to work from home on a regular basis in the past. If I had, say, like a couch being delivered, or if I had an emergency with my daughter, then that was acceptable. But really to work from home full time or even half the time was not something that, was being offered to employees. So that changed very quickly. We all of a sudden, it seemed like almost over a weekend, had 800 people working from home. We had a lot of IT issues. Our IT systems couldn't support people logging in remotely like that. So there were a lot of different challenges. And then we also have a production group that, because we are a defense company, their jobs were considered essential, and we produce military goods. And so they were going in every day. And so there was a little bit of, jealousy and resistance around having to go in, and other people working from home. And so we really had to deal with a lot of change management and a lot of concerns from employees who had to go into the office around safety. And then it started with masks, and then all of a sudden we were doing pre-screening, and then all of a sudden we got a temperature screening a few months later. So it seemed like slowly things were really starting to tighten up with regards to the health and safety of everybody coming on site. We stopped on-site interviews. I know, Maria, you work for banks. I know they stopped a lot of appointments and in-person walk-ins, and that's a huge change too. So yeah, it was a lot of change. It was fast, it was furious, and I'll kind of mirror what Maria said in the sense of, now it's given people an opportunity to say, hey, I'm actually 150 times more effective working from home. I'm able to save this much money on gas. It's improved my mental health because I, may be home more, or whatever the case may be. So I think for us, it'll be, I've been told that it'll be for myself, optional or hybrid or full-time if I want. So for myself, they're kind of, being really flexible, which is great, because like I said, in the past, that's not something that would have been offered. So it's been a crazy year and a half, almost, right? I think so. I think we can say
Feels like it.
Okay.
Feels like a year and a half. Yeah. And I think a lot of the students here will agree it's been pivot upon pivot upon pivot in every way. And that's why we're here, because we're trying to support students getting their co-op credit when they can't work. So yeah, there's been a lot of flexibility. So the next question may actually be partly overlapping with what you've both already said. But considering the impact of economic, social, political, and cultural variables which impact your business, what do you think the biggest changes have been in your business world that have impacted your company, impacted your company? And that could be beyond COVID. We all know COVID has been huge, but are there any other factors that have affected your company? And Shannon, do you want to take the first round, or unless Maria's nodding, so she might already be ready with her answer. Nope.
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
just really quickly. I mean, we're now starting to have questions around do I need to be vaccinated to come into work? Maybe there's someone who doesn't feel comfortable getting vaccinated. There have been questions around privacy. Are we going to be tracking who's vaccinated and that sort of thing? So, you know, from you talk, and it is a little bit political and it's very, very personal. So that's something that we're kind of getting over, like, okay, vaccines are out. That's great. But now we have a whole other kind of subset of issues that we're dealing with and trying to manage people's privacy and people's bodies and their rights to what they're comfortable or not comfortable with. So that's something that I'm starting to notice is a bit of divide, and I've never really seen that in the workplace before. As I mentioned, we are a US defense company, so a lot of the things that were going on with like the election kind of spill into like our day-to-day and that sort of thing. But I've never really seen people divided at work before, like have seen two different kind of groups of people before, and we're kind of starting to see that now, where we're dealing with how to get people back to work safely and wanting to keep the individuals who may not feel comfortable getting vaccinated safe at the same time. So it's yeah, I'll say that as I'm just kind of starting to see that a little bit for the first time.
I think maybe I'll go another route. I'd say some of the changes are actually in consumer behavior and expectations. And there's a real sense of, you know, I would like it yesterday, not in 2 days. And it really has become as a result of efficiency. And so, you know, what I would share is, as a leader in a community with employees is, you know, I would typically schedule a day to go visit different locations. With COVID, I actually became closer to my team than I'd ever been before, because I don't get into a car and I don't drive for a period of time, and I can spend more time, and it's more reflective, it's more definitive, it's you know, we can get things accomplished together more quickly. I would say that would probably be kind of a really big change. I think the other piece, and I had said around consumer behavior, and it's, you know, what's really amazing is our consumers come in more educated, more prepared, more knowledgeable than ever before. And so we really need to check ourselves at the door and look ourselves in the mirror and say, well, you know, if I have an opportunity to speak to Shannon for 20 minutes, how am I really going to help Shannon? And so, you know, I would say it is a big change, because, you know, gone is the day where we are really the more equipped. We're equally equipped as our consumers are. And so we really need to make sure that we're providing the utmost when we do have an interaction with our clients. And then I'd say the other piece is around our employer. And so as an organization, you know, to have been here for 23 years, it's a real standout of loyalty for myself. But what I would really say has been, I'm not sure a change is really the word, but just the care that the organization has taken with us around mental health and wellness, work-life balance, and the focus on our families and whatever that makeup looks like, and really being flexible to, Shannon alluded to, well, maybe I need to go pick up my child, or maybe I need to go do this. And so that's a real reflection of just, you know, going with the flow while we still continue to manage role, family life, personal life, and you know, the different complexities that we're faced with.
And don't forget supporting employees who actually have contracted COVID, or their families have as
Absolutely.
well, right? Like, yeah. I'm reminded of, you know, my daughter got COVID in November after she had went back to school, and you know, there were all sorts of resources through my employer as well, in my organization, and even the school was great, the health unit was great, and I felt at first very panicked, but when you get that kind of support from your employer and take the time you need and do what you need to do, it's priceless. It goes a long way.
So I just want to carry on with the change management piece. So I'm still with the business questions for those of you that are not business students, but I'm sorry, just as talking to the office admin students for a moment. this question that we've just answered is relevant to your first question as well. And I'm going to come back to a piece of legislation that the Office of Admin students need to know about. But I just wanted to ask, because you were talking about change management, what do you feel were the pieces that you needed to put in place in terms of infrastructure that you had not anticipated that are supporting some of these changes? And I'm hearing some of it already, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything. You've got the infrastructure, you've got the flexibility, but what infrastructure did you need to implement to support some of that flexibility? I don't know if that question made sense, but
maybe I'll take a stab at it. Just at the retail space that I work through, I would say the infrastructure was technology for us. And so it was, you know, when hundreds of individuals are asked to leave to work from home, it was, you know, there wasn't enough inventory for laptops. There wasn't enough inventory for telephones. And, you know, Shannon had talked about just sheer access to the internet and, you know, bandwidth and getting into virtual conference. And so that was a real infrastructure in that point. That's really the only piece that I could really share, just given the sheer role. But I would say in others, it was, you know, sort of a divide and conquer in national office as well, in terms of, you know, what sort of immediacy do we have on these priorities? Do we need to shelve those and actually kind of pivot and go to these other ones? But we worked a lot on applications for consumers and for employees. And so it was very IT driven. I mean, they were working unbelievably, in addition to the infrastructure of our outbound and inbound calling centers. And so we had an influx of individuals we hired to help the call volumes that we were experiencing at the time. So, you know, people are not on wait or hold for hours and hours on end because that was being experienced. So I would say infrastructure in terms of calling center and infrastructure around IT and technology.
fantastic, thank you. And Shannon, just from the HR perspective, how are you finding it handling confidentiality, very sensitive information in this environment where everyone's working from home?
I mean, yeah, that's a really good question. We were very paper driven, like before COVID, like a lot, like if we had new hires coming in, or if we would print resumes, we would make an employee file, we would, you know, put it nicely in a nice little binder and we'd file it away. And so obviously we're not in the office. I have to collect my documentation. You know, all of it's electronic. I receive it back electronically. And I have actually had a couple of employees say, like new hires say, they don't feel comfortable sending their banking through email, or they password protected. And then the people who need to open it on the other end can't open it. And so certainly it's been a challenge. I'm lucky enough that I work, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, but because I work for a defense contractor, we do work on an extremely secured network. I'm not joking when I say I have like 50 passwords just to get into my Outlook. And that includes, I even have something here called the BitLocker ID. So I have like a 6-digit code that changes every, you know, 5 or 6 seconds. And so there's all sorts of really great tools and firewalls in place, in that I can kind of reassure the people that I'm going back and forth with. And Maria is nodding because she works for the bank as well. But it's not just like we're using Hotmail or Gmail, you know, as a small company. So I think we're both kind of lucky in the sense that we have security teams and IT teams who make sure that our drives and our networks and our email are all protected as you know, as tightly as they can be. But just reassuring people is all you can do.
Yeah. And actually, Shannon, you just reminded me of something. Your RSA or your token ID, yours is there and mine's on a phone for same security. But the other infrastructure that we increased was around fraud. So we saw an increase in fraud during this period of time. And it was really, really heartbreaking, where individuals just were having a hard time making ends meet. And so the infrastructure that we had in place was really an increase in protecting our clients, protecting employees, privacy of information, and we had an increase in fraudulent wires, checks, you name it, we were experiencing it. And so that was a real double down for us as we were in the thick of COVID.
Okay, so I have a question about performance management. So for office admin students, performance management, setting priorities and ensuring time management strategies are in place within an organization are important. How are these assessed in a remote environment? So as a manager, how are you assessing your staff's ability? And I know you haven't seen this question, what barriers did the organization recognize in workflow as it pertains to the role of administration? I started touching on that already. And then what software was used to facilitate your workflow? So we're looking at how staff are time managing on their own working at home, how you're assessing it as a manager, what barriers there are, and then what technology or software you were using to help staff.
Maria, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. So I'd say on the performance management side, so my business plan didn't change. The expectations of my role didn't change. But I like the question around, like, how did you observe what you were expecting? And so there's a phrase called inspect what you expect. And so we work on a practice management routine called observational coaching. And so I got to I'm going to go back to spending more quality time with our teams. And so knowing that, the performance activities don't change, the outcomes are still the same. But what we did do is spend more quality time helping each other meet performance objectives, KPIs, I guess, for lack of better terminology. And the technology was, for us, we use a platform called Webex. Some use Teams, some used other sort of ways to facilitate. And, we were able to train in modes that way. And then we were able to actually connect with clients in that software mode. I hope that answers the question, but, I would say overall, our mandates for role didn't change, our KPIs didn't change, business plan didn't change. It's the how changed, but the what stayed the same. And I would say what we were able to actually produce within 45 minutes, an hour, the time frame that we were with each other or with clients is actually unbelievable. And just the sharing of information you can't do over the telephone. And so what video conferencing has allowed is pretty awesome.
Witness this very moment in time. Yes. So there's a question also for you, Maria, from Danielle. How many different departments work as part of your organizations? RBC is massive, but maybe just in the division you're part of?
Yeah. Okay. So Danielle, I don't know how many, but let's take a real good stab at this. So I would say I have 12 different lines of business I work with. And then I have colleagues in national office who I connect with. And colleagues in national office are very strategic in terms of how they help me deliver on the business. And then my partners are kind of boots on the ground, if you will, with me. And so an example would be, I have an employee who can help a client with, bank accounts or credit cards or lines of credit. An example. And then I would call on my partner, Shannon, who can do mortgages. Then I'd call on my partner, Beth, who can do investments. And then I'd call on Tom, who can do, help with someone who's looking to start up a business. And so I would say without even blinking an eye or using my fingers or toes, I'd be at 20 plus pretty quickly. And yeah, and I would say there's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new and I don't meet a new partner or a new function or a new department where I go, I had no idea we had that. So it's pretty incredible.
It's quite a different scale from perhaps your organization, Shannon. So would you mind giving us a sense of the structure of your organization? It gives us a really great overview.
Yeah, dozens and dozens of different departments and sub-departments. But we do really have a couple of different business units that are a little bit more might be a little bit more easier to explain. So we essentially have our engineering group who, you know, they develop the product, they fix and troubleshoot problems, they code, and they kind of are the brains behind the product that we put out. And then we have our production and manufacturing group who assemble, they test, they repair. So we also get products back for repair in Burlington. And then we have our support staff. So those are people like myself that work in HR, finance, contracts and legal, customer service, IT, and that sort of thing. And then again, within those groups, there's, you know, layers and layers like an onion. Yeah, it's actually probably one of the hardest things I had to kind of wrap my head around when I first started, is just how many different departments and groups and what they do. So it's in my HR group, if that helps, we have talent acquisition, we have a recruitment department, we have myself who works in total rewards. So we handle everything that I touched on. We have data and analytics, people who work in our systems and run reports and report up to corporate. And then unlike some other organizations, departments like environmental health and safety, training and development, they actually sit under operations. So it's a bit different than what I learned when I was in school, but every organization is much different than how it's structured. Payroll is part of finance, not HR. So it's a little bit different, but it's a little different wherever you go.
Thank you. There's another question now from Danielle for Maria. How does your team alongside other departments maximize efficiency? Sorry, croak.
So it'll depend on what efficiency is. And it depends on your department. And so, you know, an IT department will test efficiency on how quickly we can go through applications from start to finish. How many clicks could be an efficiency. For us in the branch network, efficiency is a couple of facets. So one would be, you know, how many clients can we connect with in a day? Because it's our role to make sure we're connecting with as many clients as possible within a day that's humanly possible without, you know, minimizing or diminishing the expectations that are there. Efficiency is also in productivity. And so, you know, if we have a client meeting, the meeting doesn't stop just because we've, you know, ended the virtual conference or a client has left our office. And so efficiency is, how do I manage my time? And so during COVID, we did a ton of skill building around time management, and it's different for everyone. And so it really became you know, you work 8 hours in a day, you take an hour lunch, you get a couple breaks. And so but you've got all of these things to do. And so efficiency is really, how do you get into your day to day without dropping crystal balls, and allowing you still the flexibility to have sort of a 911 come at 3:30, which you had no idea was coming. And so there was a lot of time management and balancing of work around efficiency. So, you know, it could be widgets. So some departments will say, you know, efficiency is around widgets, efficiency is around, you know, contacts, or it could be just around accomplishments within a day. And so it's not a very black and white answer to you, but I wanted to make sure that you were pretty broad in your thinking, that it depends how you're measuring efficiency.
Thank you. And I just wanted to pull into the piece of mental health here. And I don't know whether you want to address this one, Shannon, but when you're observing your staff as well for efficiency, how are you also capturing or recognizing when mental health is becoming a concern and it might be affecting how they're producing?
Well, it's for us, it's hard because people are working remotely. So where I would normally maybe have a meeting or run into someone, and what normally starts off as a quick chat, and then you realize they're having a hard day or they're going through something, like that's not really happening anymore. So, you know, so there's that piece and that bit of a challenge, but you know, we have seen an increase in leave of absences, people having to take, you know, mental health leave, or potentially have to take care of children that normally would have been in school and now they're home. So and a lot of those times those leaves aren't paid either. So it's really unfortunate, but people have to make the best decision for them. I know as myself working, and as I mentioned, my daughter had COVID in and out of school. I'm working full time, and there's a lot of us in this boat who are trying to work and deal with everything. And what I can say is that, my manager and my team are the most supportive people I have ever worked for, other than when I held, roles at Georgian, of course. But there are EFAP programs in place. We did all sorts of blasts and engagement weeks, and we had our EFAP partner, any kind of COVID resource or lunch and learn session that they were putting together. We made sure that we were offering that to the employees. We have a pretty good personal day and flex time policy. I don't want to brag, but I get every other Friday off, which is really nice. So, we work a 980 work schedule at L3. So we work 80 hours and 9 business days, and we get every other Friday off. So that's really nice too, because the day is busy. You're already probably working overtime anyway. And then to get that, long weekend every other weekend is a really nice break. And actually it's nice because when we have, they'll always make it up if there's a holiday. So say if a holiday falls on a Friday that we're supposed to have off, they'll push it out to Monday. We get a 4-day weekend. So they always make it up. So I found that between vacation time and those nice long weekends and things like that, it was, it was really nice and nice to take the time away from the computer. Because as I mentioned, it's no sweat to work the extra half hour, because a lot of us are working overtime anyway, and you take calls and they go late and that sort of thing. So, and it's been definitely a focus of ours. And yeah, it's something that is just so important for not only the workplace, but I know Georgian has a fantastic, I hope most of the students on this call know about the fantastic resources at Georgian College. If you're experiencing any kind of mental health issues, they're fantastic resources, really good people working in that department as well. So.
And it's all included in tuition. Yeah, so take advantage. So there are a couple of questions that have just come up. So Hosai asks, what barriers did the organization recognize as it pertains to administration?
I can go first. So as I mentioned, we were very much a paper company. The people like myself got to work from home, but people in finance did not. Like, we were still running checks. We were still getting invoices in the mail that needed to be paid. So it's not as though the entire finance department could go work from home. So we have over the last year really beefed up our virtual processes, and that, an expense report doesn't need to be printed and signed and walked down to finance and then processed. And it was kind of a very old school way. So again, this has really accelerated our paperless initiative, which was going very slow and seemed to be like, at the time impossible. And now, everything is being done virtually, and we're slowly starting to get there. So I will say that the administrators that work for our business probably had a lot of challenges with just how to figure out from going from working in paper and files. And I'm sure Maria, like at the bank, you've got all sorts of stuff that you would have had in filing cabinets and things like that people may not have access to now. So just trying to figure out how to get those files, and how to get the processes, virtual and over email and that sort of thing was probably their biggest challenge.
I think the only other thing I'd say, I don't know if barrier is the right word, but I would say a challenge we faced is helping our employees increase their confidence in their abilities to enable clients in a virtual world. And so, the barrier could have been, discomfort, lack of confidence. I don't want to look, discredited or not credible in front of others and sort of embarrassed. And so that was a really hard place to be when, there was the vast majority sort of moving forward and going with the flow, but there was a small percentage who we really, it was shoulder to shoulder, as we would say, virtually, to really enable and empower people to say, like, yeah, Shannon, like, you can do this.
Yeah.
Here's how easy it is. And don't sweat it. the best thing you can say is, I've, never done this. This is my first time. Like, just be patient with me, Shannon, because we're going on this, journey together. And so, there was a lot of work that we did up front there. And, fast forward to today, man, we're just, people are flourishing.
I still you're making me think of this older gentleman at my work. His name's Trevor. He's just the best. But we were on a call the other day and he's like, I've never shared my screen before. And it was just like, really, Trevor? Like it's been a year and a half. And so I will say this, and it's I hope it doesn't come off as rude, but I certainly find that the older generation that hadn't been used to using smartphones or apps like Zoom or even having social media accounts and things like that, I will say probably struggled a little bit too. And then we also have a couple of employees who came out to say like, hey, I'm not comfortable downloading things onto my phone, or I'm not comfortable with some of the privacy language in these apps or whatever it was. So just having to try to deal with that as well on the side. But just laughing at Trevor kind of in the back of my head to try to
Well, us old folks are
yeah, I know, I don't want to sound like
struggling
that.
through.
I don't mean to say it like that.
No, you
maybe.
didn't sound that way. But even my mom, who's in her late 70s, has had to learn how to use Zoom and Facebook Messenger to
Yeah.
stay connected. Otherwise, she's 100% alone in her house. So the need for
Yeah.
social interaction is going to drive you. Maria, here's a question for you. How did administrators handle the demand of multiple supervisors during the pandemic? So as a manager, when you see that there are various people in the hierarchy that are all honing in on one poor hapless person, how can you advise that they manage those things?
It was stressful and not everybody was happy, but it happened. And so I would say, it wasn't, I will answer that question by saying it's important to have frame of reference before meeting senior leaders and other leaders who join a meeting or join a session with you. And so, at the end of the day, I knew that, 5 layers up for me were joining me and my colleagues and, my team, because they were learning from us. They were asking us for feedback. They weren't saying, oh, Maria's not doing this, or Maria discounted this, and they weren't looking for holes. It was really a learning session because we had, we were boots on the ground, and we were feeding up the ladder to make sure, this isn't working, we're struggling with this. Can you think about this? And we were often asked if utopia was, sort of on the table, what would you guys want? And then, that was sort of the feedback. And so it was pretty stressful. It was overwhelming. Some were kind of anxiety stricken because it's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe so-and-so is here with me right now. But it all depends on your frame of reference and, the reason why, there's individuals who are senior leaders who are joining us. Having said that, though, it did give us a couple of lessons. And the lesson is, you don't just fly by the seat of your pants or wing things. Like, you go in prepared, you do your homework. There's a reason why there's 5 people who've been asked to attend with senior leaders. And it's not because you had a great day yesterday. It's because there's some positive trending or momentum or some best practice sharing that's happening. And so I'll just go back to, it happened often, and it could because of just the virtual world. But you never lose sight of, why am I here? What's the value I need to add? And I think fast forward to today, it's just become part of what we do. And it just shows how, slim and shorter and smaller the hierarchy within a company can get. I would say, just on that note, our CEO joined a team in Oakville a few weeks back. I met our CEO years ago, and he just happened to join us virtually because he
could. It's like Undercover Boss.
I know, it's just,
oh man. I love that show. That show's so good.
But talk about like an amazing experience for our employees to have senior leaders join us like that.
That's a good perspective. Elizabeth, I hope that helped you. I hope you picked that up. That was really great. So Daniel is your new fan, Maria. He's got another question for you. Today, companies increase cross-training to learn multiple roles. So what are some benefits and some issues that come up in the future because of this cross-training?
Okay, benefits first and foremost. Oh my goodness. The ability to wear multiple hats is phenomenal. So, being able to sort of say, Daniel, I need to, we need you to do this. And then when you're done this, here's something. And you just get exposed to a multitude of experiences. Amazing. And then the benefits really do pair it forward, because there are roles that actually are coming out of COVID that are being created today, where the cross training and the cross skill building will be, people will have the foundational roles for future roles, or the foundation of sort of future roles. I would say the concern as a leader who's had, has been afforded the opportunity for multiple experiences is an individual actually does not get a lot of depth in a role. And that can hurt someone. And I say that sort of loosely, because you will know a little about a lot, but not a lot about a little. And specialization and expertise can't be undervalued. And so absolutely, if you ever have the opportunity to be cross-trained, trained in different departments, even if there's pilot projects on the go, be the first to raise your hand. Great experiences to add to your tool belt of skill sets. But I would say just be cautious to not run before you walk and crawl, because that depth and breadth of experience, unless you want to go 2 steps forward to go 5 backwards, that's what you're going to get caught up in. And I would say it comes from sheer enthusiasm and just willingness to be amazing and keep doing great things. But I'd say one needs to sort of stop and say, okay, have I got everything I possibly can in the role that I'm in, or in the position that I'm in? And note to, those on the line, and certainly would be happy if, Shannon added into this from an HR perspective, if there's anything to add, but cyclicality in a role gives you depth. And so that actually gives you a couple of years. So it's not, I did 6 months, I'm moving on. It's a minimum of, 18, 24 months to 36 months to actually prove to yourself that you can sustain, you can remain competitive, you can still continue to, achieve results, keep a high bar of credibility. That's how you build brand and legacy at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I can add to that, and from an employee's perspective. So I'm a mid-level employee. I don't have direct reports. I'm not a manager of anybody. I have a manager, and then she's got a manager, and so that sort of thing. But I've been cross training into different things, and I've been getting involved in different projects. And so in my organization, it's not as though you stop an assignment and start. And so for me, it's challenging right now, because I'm managing multiple different projects, and I don't know really where to pour all of my energy in a day, because the work is always there. And the projects sometimes, like I just wrapped a project up that lasted a year. And so some of them you're continuously chipping away at something, and then you're maybe getting involved in something else. And then maybe you manage another couple of programs that are like something that happens every week. And then, so for me, it's a little bit challenging, because I find it hard, and just a lot going on at the same time, because my organization and my role is a bit different in that, I'm being pulled into all sorts of different things, which is great. And I'll never say no. And people do pull me in, because like Maria said, they know that I'm enthusiastic, and that I'll be hopefully a good contributing member to the team. But it's also sometimes a bit to my detriment. And one of the things that in my performance review that, I get a lot of feedback on, is just how to maybe say no, or how to just like focus on what you're doing instead of taking on a little bit more, even if the opportunities are there, because it may be, hindering other things. So just to keep that in mind. I don't know, some organizations are a bit more structured with different cross training opportunities, and you usually start an assignment and stop one, and there's a clear definitive. But with my organization, it's a little different, and so I'm constantly being pulled into different things, different departments, and that's great. But sometimes a little bit hard to manage, because no one tells me that I can or can't do things. Like my manager, you know, she doesn't say, no, you can't take part in that. So it's up to me to manage how much I'm taking on and how many groups I'm working with and that sort of thing.
That's really great advice, because especially when you're new in a career or even in a co-op, you're going to want to
Might be
make
a
a
little
great
too eager.
impression.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and you
Mhm.
want to make all the connections, and you've got some students are super ambitious and they want to be running the company in 10 years from now. So they want a little bit of everything, but it has to unfold, and definitely there's value in staying, as Maria said, and having that cyclical understanding of the whole year and how it all rolls out, not just this 1 month or 2 month period. Okay, so now we're going to draw straws, because Vrushenk has a question, and he's an accounting student, and he very nicely picked a question that I think that you probably will be okay with. I'm just looking at the accounting question so we can find some more to help him with his assignment. So he has a question: how companies are managing tax liability during COVID, and how are you ensuring customers are understanding their tax liability? If you're not comfortable answering this question, I will see if I can find another one that might be a little less technical. But
I'll handle this. Shannon, oh, do you want to start, Shannon?
I think if I understand it correctly, like would customers be employees? Like maybe I'm not understanding the question. So within my organization, we had when tax time came around and we were issuing T4s, there were certain like forms and letters that we could draft on behalf of the employees for expenses that they incurred. I don't know if that's at all what the question is around, or
yeah, why don't I reread it from
okay.
the notes? How do you ensure that you comply with relevant statutes and regulations in terms of tax liabilities? How do you communicate clearly and effectively with clients about their tax liability? And what strategies do you use to ensure customers understand?
Different department, so I can't speak to that. I wouldn't
Maria,
I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine.
I have a very nice team of people who take care of that.
Exactly. Yes, the Vrushenks of the world.
Yeah, so I'll start with saying we have tax specialists that we depend on. And so we would never, a tax strategy could be for us to suggest, Shannon has, makes $100,000 a year, has this in cash flow, has this in expenditures, is paying this in taxes, does not have an RSP. Shannon, why don't we look at a couple of strategies that could help minimize the taxes that you pay? That would be a strategy that's well known. Do we get into how do you carry forward, business losses for someone who's self-employed? No. So, we would absolutely say, Shannon, you need to actually seek advice from an accountant or a tax specialist. Mm-hmm. And so we would never go down there. The liability is actually in the advice provided. And so we'd actually, we would be highly liable for providing Shannon with the incorrect information. And so there's high level, tax strategies that we would absolutely support. But there are absolutely tax strategies that we would say you need to seek the advice and counsel of a tax specialist.
As an onboarding specialist, and we have people fill out, those TD1 and TD01 forms. There's 2 forms you need to fill out for tax purposes, but when you start a new job, and I get all sorts of questions. What should I check this box? How much should I be? And it's just, sorry, you need to speak with a tax specialist, because again, I've always just been told it's a huge liability. We do have a payroll team that's somewhat more specialized in answering some very specific questions like that, but they'll also refer people off to a personal tax specialist or accountant.
I just wanted to pop on to help any accounting students. You can still fill out an application form to be matched one-on-one with an alumni. We just don't have any accounting alumni on the call today, but if you fill out an application form and send it in to me prior to July 28th, I can match you with an accounting alumni who will be able to answer your specific accounting questions. For more information on the application form, you can contact your co-op consultant.
which would be me. And I would just add to it, if you are here today and you're able to get answers to your questions for 2 of your learning outcomes, you don't need to apply for a separate interview now because we've completed the component. So you just have to write it now. So some of you, if you look through your questions, you'll actually see that the ladies have answered them. It might not have been, I read the question, they answered the question, but I've seen some of the questions in here. I think you have the material to answer it, and you will receive this as a link. You can watch the recording afterwards with the questions in front of you. So my advice would be to go down all of the questions and, oh, when we were talking about mental health, that answered this question over here. So there have been a couple of questions that are a little bit overlapping things that have been said, which is fine because you can't hear every single thing we said. You're watching it live, but there is going to be enough content in today's session for you for those of you that are here, I think you'll be all right. Unless you're in accounting, you might need an interview. Is it okay to go on to the next question, ladies? Do you need a glass of water or a little breather for a second?
Got my little tea here.
Got your tea. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so
which might be a problem in about half an hour. I don't know. Let's see.
Well, it's okay. If you need to run, we'll wait for you.
Thanks.
So I did hear Maria mention that you were using Webex for workflow purposes and meeting purposes. Are there any other softwares that you were using at RBC for collaborating? And then how did the organization convey priorities? I think that's a separate question, but let's talk about the collaboration first.
So we are purely Webex. We used Webex for the virtual conferencing angle, kind of what we would do today, so not Zoom. And then we actually shifted from Microsoft Link to Webex Teams. And so that's how we created sort of, I guess, collaborative chat functions, if you will, between different teams. And that actually served a great deal of purpose because we kind of back to flexibility and agility is if we were working on certain training material, we'd have a team for that. If we were working on certain, employee engagement pieces, we had a team for that. And so it was all Webex team based. But it was down to the chat function and then the virtual conferencing for software for us. That's not to say, and I wouldn't be able to answer this, but that's not to say that different departments haven't used different capabilities or different technologies, depending on what the service or the provider that they were connecting with, like different apps that were being created would certainly be of different software. But organizationally, Webex was our technology provider.
Shannon, do you want to add anything for your organization?
Yeah, we use Skype for Business and we use Zoom. So if it's just a quick phone call and you just need to hop on a call with a group of people, then we use Skype for Business. And then if you need to meet people, Zoom. The nice thing with Zoom is you can share your screen. So, people can maybe open up a PowerPoint and everyone kind of chime in and work on something together. And then Links is something that I actually used with the continuous improvement team. That's the only time I've seen it where they were like having sticky notes everywhere. It was such a cool kind of they're a very brilliant group of people, but we generally just stick with Skype for Business. And we do have some tools that are measuring productivity, and I see a couple questions in the chat around that. And for my organization, and maybe it's just mine, but we actually had the opposite problem where we couldn't get people to log off, people working overtime. So that's actually something. I'm sure there are people who are logging in and who aren't maybe working their full 9 hours or 9.5 hours, but we actually, and even for myself, I find, because you're here at home and it's so busy and there's, so much going on. So we actually have seen trends in the opposite direction, and that people are actually working longer hours than they should be, logging in on weekends, things that normally they wouldn't be able to do because, as I mentioned, people weren't able to work from home before. So when you left the office on a Thursday or Friday, that was it until Monday. Now people are waking up on Saturday morning, having a coffee, logging in, all of a sudden they're doing a half a day of work. So I know that they're monitoring that, but I don't know that they're actually I know some organizations have softwares that can track all sorts of things, and really a bit scary to think about, but we certainly don't we don't reprimand or monitor in the sense that like you weren't at your computer for 9.5 hours today and that sort of thing. I don't think they're tracking on, you know, on that scale. As a matter of fact, we've seen an increase in productivity, and so that's fantastic. But too much productivity is not good either, because you want people to take the time for themselves.
Yeah, work-life balance is definitely a challenge. And then Elizabeth in Office Admin has just asked, with many companies switching to some sort of remote work, what are some of the benefits you see to this change, and what are some issues that might arise because of it? Now, we've mentioned a number of different things in this meeting already. Is there anything that you haven't mentioned that you would like to talk about?
I would say, oh yeah,
So no, you go ahead, Maria.
no, go ahead.
Okay. I would say for us, like we're in Burlington, Ontario, which I mean, people within the GTA are willing to commute like an hour to an hour and a half to work one way. So I know that sounds crazy, but the radius in which people were coming into the office was, we have people in Orangeville, Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo, Brantford, Hamilton. So all that driving and all, you know, decrease in like car emissions and time on the road and time getting ready. Like now I you know, I was just going into the office yesterday and I'm having to get up an hour and a half earlier and you know, so I was tired. And so, you know, and it's just, those are little things. And, but you know, it's a hard adjustment going back into the office, because it was a hard adjustment to stay home. That was hard enough. And at times for me became a little bit like sad and lonely, especially when it was like the winter months. Like it was hard, you know, when we wake up, it's snowy out, you know, we have no reason to really get dressed or go anywhere, and you're just kind of logging in and doing your work. So I would say like the commute for our organization is probably the biggest, you know, the biggest thing. Is a lot of people are saying it's 2 to 3 hours a day that they're saving, where they're able to either work a little bit later or spend time with family or pick up a hobby or something like that. So that's huge.
The only thing I would add, so, you know, Shannon hit on a lot of the benefits of just hybrid working or remote working. I'd say the caution that we had seen or have seen and continue to see is those who live on their own socially, who, you know, I think at the beginning it was just out of fear. There was a real, I'd like to work from home too. And then we had individuals that put up their hand and said, like, I need to come back. I'm not happy to come back, but I need to come back because like I'm here by myself. I don't have, you know, social interactions. I'm missing that. And, you know, we had a lot of concern for mental health and wellness, and it was real. And so I would say that would be, you know, something to sort of be aware of or conscious of when someone's very excited to work from home, is how do they stay and remain socially stimulated? It's because it's a thing for sure.
Or having people like me begging, can I go in? My family's driving me crazy. I have to get out of this house. I can't focus on anything. My kid's out of school. Sure, tablet's not working. And that was, for me, that was hard. It was days I was like, you know, desperate to go in and see coworkers, like, I'm a hugger. Okay. So, you know, I just love people. I do. And so for me, it's like not seeing my coworkers for 5-6 months at a time. That was extremely hard. Like Zoom's just not the same. And so that for me was a challenge. Was a bit of the opposite, was like a little too much stimulation at home and not really able to focus some days because whatever's going on at, you know, school or if whatever. And really not putting in a full day because I know that I've taken breaks to do stuff. And so that for me was a bit difficult in that I miss that when I go in, I am chatting with people, but also being productive at the same time. I get that stimulation and interaction, but I can sit and focus and not have a million distractions. And at one point I was ordering a lot of Amazon and stuff like that. Packages at the door and yeah. So anyway, it's for me, I'm like, you know, a squirrel, like I'm very easily distracted. So that was a little hard for me when everyone was at home. There's a lot going on.
Yes, it is hard. And the work-life balance is really out of balance when it's right there the whole time. I've gone and sat in the backyard myself to talk to a student. This question is from Maria. What kind of customer service philosophy is in place at your company? And how is it communicated to new staff as well as clients?
So we're a for-profit organization who depends on having clients in order to be profitable, so that we can, give back to communities, we can, contribute economically. And so the client experience, I would tell you, with an employee experience is at the top of any hierarchy of any decision that's made. So if there's a product, a widget, an app, a journey, something, it always has a client and an employee at the top of it. In addition to that, we very regularly seek feedback from our clients, to the point where you may or may not be an RBC client and you may have received a survey. And the survey is very specific to an experience, very specific to options or alternatives you receive. So very specific to that. That also allows clients to provide verbatims. And me as a leader receives that daily, multiple times a day. It could be specific to an interaction. It could be specific to an employee. And there could be other things in there that provide me actionable items. To the question of how often is it communicated, it's daily and multiple times. And there is a keen eye on there. And so if you're kind of interested to see how RBC or other banks are doing, the barometer is a JD Power Award. And I'd ask you to take a look at what that is. And our organization would be a proud owner of the JD Power Award for multiple years in a row. In addition to that, when you think about the experience that a client receives, it also supports the value of our brand being recognized. And recently, we were one of the most powerful and most valuable brands globally. And so when you can bring sort of a client experience that resonates that strongly, I hope that answers your question, but I'd ask you to maybe take a look at those two things: a JD Power that really speaks to client service and what that means to an organization, and as well the link to, we take client interaction seriously. Are there mistakes? Absolutely. Do things go awry? For sure. But is it in the mannerism that it's dealt with? Absolutely. And so that's the difference. And so that's not saying that it's perfect, because it's not. And I'd never say that to anyone. But it is about, working together to say, this actually went off the rails. How do we bring it back in and then move forward in the help and the benefit of clients?
The second part to that question, Maria, and I'm still putting you on the spot, but Shannon, feel free to weigh in on this one. And also, how is your organization responding to the need to develop inclusive practice in the workplace? And this is probably a good one for both of you to address.
I don't know what inclusive practice means.
Well, it is open to interpretation here.
If it's diversity and inclusion, I would say that's actually a proud point for us. If that's the version that it's going to. And I
yes, diversity for sure.
Okay.
However you want to interpret it, though.
Okay, so I'll interpret with diversity and inclusion. I would say that there's never been a more active time for large organizations. Typically have what we would call, or could be termed differently, but essentially are employee resource groups who support different groups. It could be, Pride. It could be, we have a Royal Eagles in support of Indigenous employees or families or families. We have one that's around and focused on, we call it REACH, but it's very much about those who may have visible or invisible disabilities or inabilities, and that's the support. And so those are examples. And so I would say it has never been more alive than it is today as a company. and focused on women. I think, that's the other piece is there's, we have an employee resource group focused on helping and supporting women who, seek mentors, so that they, there's equity in the organization. And so we have, a barometer where X amount of women should occupy senior leadership roles. That's not far-fetched from other organizations, and it's real. And man, is it alive and well. Like, it's a real proud point.
And
Yeah, we also
understand-
have employee resource groups as well, ERGs. So those are groups that employees can volunteer to be a part of or sometimes lead. And same type of thing. It's Pride. It's women in engineering. I think it's empowering and engaging women in engineering. And then there are all sorts of other ones. And I think it's fantastic. Those have just popped up about a year ago. Those are new. And then I also know that the recruitment team, and back when I worked in recruitment, I'm glad my job was just recruitment, but the standards in which the recruitment team is being held to, and then the metrics that are being gathered and scrutinized are around how many women did you have interviewed for the position, how many people with disabilities, what disability job boards are you posting to, what career fairs are you going to that targets women in engineering or women in STEM. So I feel for the recruitment and talent team because they are under the microscope to bring our numbers up. They are not the best right now. Most of our executive team are all white gentlemen. They're all fantastic people. They're maybe the best people for the job, and nothing, to say that they aren't, but there are people noticing stuff like that now. Org charts and who's on top and who's managing certain things. And so I wish I could say we were better. I wish we could be as proud as Maria, sounds, but we're trying to get there, and that's through recruitment strategy and promoting within and internal opportunities as well.
Shannon, Elizabeth has a question, which I think might be a good one for you. It's just because you're dealing with a multinational corporation. What areas of communication have been more of a challenge with the increased need for remote work and changing protocols?
Is that for me or for Maria?
Yeah, for you, Shannon. I'm thinking from the perspective of the multinational.
Yeah, that's been difficult. Like in the US, they sent a big email out about a month ago saying no more masks at work. They don't have like an international distribution list. Like everything comes out. We are the largest international division in Burlington, and then there's a few others in Canada, a couple in the UK, one in Italy. So, they don't. So then we have to put out the fire. And that's how it's been throughout COVID. Like they'll send something out, and again, because they're in the US, it's been completely different reaction and policies. And we knew that the communication was coming out, and we said, please don't send it. It's going to cause a lot of confusion. It came out anyway, because that's just the way the company runs. And so that's been really difficult, is basically having to backtrack what's coming out from corporate. And then we also have 2 intranet sites, employee internal sites. And so one of them is our local one, where all of our local policies are posted, our benefits, our RSP plans and things like that. But then we also have a corporate one. And so employees will kind of start stumbling through that, and they'll be like, they'll find something on like a 401k and and that's just not, we don't have those programs up here. And so that's difficult because we have 2 completely different employee intranet sites in which employees can obtain information, and we mostly want people to use ours, but for some things they do need to go to the other. And so that's been certainly a challenge. I can't wait until I can not wear my mask at work, but we're not there yet. But the communication came out, and then we had to come out and say, oh, not for Canada. And it's been like that for a lot of things, and they're just kind of starting to recognize that, like for they'll come out and say, like to send an email when it's Canada Day or Canadian Thanksgiving, because those don't align, which before they didn't even, like, they would schedule meetings and stuff with us on Canada Day. I was, even just a week or 2 ago when it was Canada Day, I was asked to do something for one of my American colleagues. I just had to say, sorry, I'm out, so it's kind of funny, but not funny at the same time, because it's actually difficult to manage when you've got all sorts of different streams of communication and stuff like that coming out. It's very confusing for employees, and because there's so much information being thrown at people, it's really hard to track, okay, what's for me, what's not, what's applicable, what's not. So as a HR department, it's our job to as soon as those things come out, we have to then answer all sorts of questions and concerns from people. And we've actually had, and to that point about the masks, and I know we're not really talking about that, but we've had a lot of employees say, like, if we're going to go maskless, I don't want to come into work, you know. And so that, again, like, that's a whole other thing that we're having to deal with as well. So that email caused a lot of a lot of problems. That happens every month or every other month. That's something like that, because it's a US company. It'll come out and it's just not not applicable to us in Canada. So
wow, that does sound challenging. And then the next part to this question from Elizabeth: have there been significant changes to industry standards for communication and technologies used to communicate? So we have talked quite a bit about the technologies you've been using, but have there been significant changes in your industries, both of you, in terms of what's standard for communication? You can go ahead if you're both thinking. So whoever's got something, go.
I'm thinking, I'd say, like, we're basically doing the same. We're not like posting posters, if that makes sense. Like, again, we were very, we would maybe put out an email and then we'd put like a communication around the building in paper form. And so people could, as they're making a coffee, kind of read, an updated communication on something or that sort of thing. So we do like and again, I think there is a lot of over communication happening in my organization, but like not in a good way. There's just so much coming out. People are actually missing stuff. So that's an issue. And so it's all being done via email and things like that. And then we also keep in mind, so we've gone kind of virtual. We've really been working from home, but we have about 400 to 500 employees who are working on production and maybe don't have a laptop and they're not checking email every day. And so they're missing important updates. And so we really rely heavily on the managers who we know have access to work email, and they check their work email on their phone and that sort of thing to then downflow information during team meetings, or a lot of teams will meet daily or weekly. And so those are really good opportunities to downflow information from the top as well that may not be getting to everybody. And it may be something that you've heard or that's been posted, but I rely on my manager a lot for information and communication. I know she sees more than I do. So
So she kind of synthesizes it and passes on what you need, Shannon. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And there may be instances where, like, I mean, Maria's in a senior leadership role, so she may be able to speak to this more, but there may be instances where her boss comes out and says, okay, here's what's happening. Give her all the information, but say, like, okay, here's what I need you to communicate. And it's not the full picture, right? So they really do a good job at, like, maybe my manager gets the full picture, but then she communicates what I need to know in order not to get me anxious or upset or asking questions over something that is really, I don't need to know. I don't know if that's how it works with you, Maria.
It totally.
You take the information, you dissect it, and then you flow down what needs to be flowed down.
Yeah, because more information is actually dangerous in the wrong hands too. And I would also say one could take, an email that's 5 paragraphs long and just go into analysis paralysis and just stop in their tracks. And that's really difficult. And so, I like the word synthesize, because you do take, here's what's really important, and then here's the actionable item. And it could be really 4 sentences. The other piece, though, we started actually doing these small vignettes where, we realized that someone's attention span is actually shortened just because of exhaustion through video conferencing. And so, and just sheer emails and over communication. And so we actually turned into, quick 1 minute or 1.5 minute vignettes of, here's kind of the Coles Notes version of what you need. As opposed to reading, just kind of enjoy sort of a quick hit. And that seems to actually be resonating really strongly versus here's 10 emails, do with them what you please and read them when you've got time. So that's been actually working really well. And we have, I liked what Shannon was saying around the intranets, because we have something very similar. And years back, I think it's about, I don't know, maybe a decade old, but there's sort of a social media, kind of a Facebook piece that, platform that we have organizationally where, I can talk to somebody in the UK and I can post a question and go, I don't know where to find this. And literally seconds and minutes later, I've got an answer, as opposed to, wading, digging, looking into policies or what the case is. And so that access to information is really, it's quick, it's imminent. What we as the users need to decide is it the right information to do something with, or am I fully equipped to, put it into action?
Yes, no urban legends. Shannon, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I totally agree. And yeah, it's nice that it's Marie and I, because we can kind of, I'm an employee mid-level and she's a manager, so I can kind of speak to both.
Yeah.
It's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good combo. And I think Elizabeth's third question we've covered. And we just wanted to allow, and there's a nice comment there from Hosai to thank you, both of you, which we definitely echo. That we just wanted to spend a little bit of time towards the end of our panel. I hope you don't mind. Just be great for students to hear some of your advice on effective applications to both of your institutions if you're posting. What sort of qualifications you're looking for from students to work in your field. And that's probably a good place to start. So the application and qualifications you're looking for, and then maybe we could hit on what sort of things you're looking for in an interview as well. But let's just start with the application piece. What would you be looking for? You get to start, Shannon. I feel like that's your bread and butter right there.
A little, yeah, a little. I'm a bit removed from it now. And when I worked at Georgian, I was a job search coach for 8 months. So I helped students draft resumes and apply for jobs. And so I know it's difficult, and especially during COVID, it's hard. And the one thing that the co-op, if you haven't met your co-op consultant, or if it's Beth, or if it's, if we have HR people or other people who are going to be listening to the session, the co-op consultant is really your best friend. What the co-op consultant can help you do is really just take what experience you have, whether it be working at Wendy's or Sport Check, or whatever your first job was. They can help really pull a lot of valuable skills and experience from those jobs and help display them in a way that makes you look more appealing to entry-level business roles. There are so many skills that you have that you likely don't even know that you have. And the co-op consultants are really good for not only doing that, but just really boosting your self-confidence. They'll do mock interviews with you. And really, they just, like, my co-op consultant was Christine. So I'm going to plug Christine here because she's fantastic. And not only when I went into her office did she give me advice on my resume, she made me feel good about myself. Like she made me really confident in what I had to offer. And without meeting her, I didn't do well in elementary school. I barely made it through high school. To get into my program, I had to actually do academic upgrading and work really hard to bring up my grades from high school. So, to think about like even going to college for me was a huge hurdle. And I didn't really know how good I was or what I had to offer until I went to the Co-op and Career Services Department and met with Christine. So please reach out to someone who, is available to you. You can look up templates online. You can maybe get advice from your aunt who's worked in HR for 25 years, but they may not focus on recruitment. And so you really want someone with a fresh pair of eyes who's trained in resume consulting to help you, and you have that at your fingertips. And then the other thing I will say is that I'm a huge proponent of, I'm happy to hear, Marie, you're actively involved in your community. I am as well. Volunteering is something that goes such a long way. And there are so many opportunities and great organizations in Barrie who could use volunteers. And I know you're busy with school. It could be something that you do once a month. It doesn't need to be that you're going, every day or every weekend, but it's still something you can put on your resume if you're actively involved in something. So I would say certainly volunteer as much as you can. Those opportunities, you'd never know where they can land you. You can be networking with people in the community doing a volunteer opportunity, and then they may have a position that, fits your, that's the other thing, is you may be looking at just the co-op boards and that sort of thing, but there could be other roles out there that you didn't know could qualify as a credit for your program. So get out there as much as you can and network and volunteer, and please make an appointment with your co-op consultant to have a look at your resume. Those are my tips.
I'm going to add a couple things. So I'm going to piggyback off of Shannon. So in an interview or even a resume, it's your opportunity to tell a story about yourself. And so, a resume or an application shouldn't be 10 pages long. And so it really should be, aligned to the role that you're applying to. Absolutely. Someone, I think the question was what qualifications? So we have entry-level positions, and I'd say there are no qualifications. Customer service, having a personality, being able to make sound judgment, decisions is pretty core and foundational. Stay away from buzzwords. We live in a buzzword society. What's really difficult is we throw around words, but not all of us can actually dissect to say this is actually what they mean. And so, if I was to say, well, what does that actually mean? I get blank stares. And so you need to be able to substantiate whatever is on an application or a resume. You need to be able to sort of say, this is what I mean. This is why it was important to me. I like Shannon's reference to volunteerism. What that actually does show is your ability or capability to have a balanced profile and have, things that you do on the side, or bringing out personal pieces like I enjoy X or I love Y. That's, it's you that we're hiring. It's not what's on a piece of paper. What's on a piece of paper just says, yeah, I think this individual could really do the role, but it's you who the organization wants to fit in the culture, to fit in, the day-to-day, to really knock that role out of the park. And I think what ends up happening is sometimes you stop being yourself. And at no point do you ever stop being yourself, because that's who the organization wants. And so don't ever go into an application or a write-up or a resume or an interview trying to be somebody who you aspire to be, but you're actually not. It's not going to go very well. And people will sniff you out.
That is
People
solid
like
gold,
Maria.
folks. Solid gold. So good. Sorry, carry
It's
on.
not a bad thing to have a one-page resume at the stage that students are at. It's really not. By the time you get your header in and your objective, like, your nice little summary, and then maybe one or two positions, I think that's more than acceptable.
So as far as the interview is concerned, do you have any tips for students? Because some of them may lack interview experience or may be nervous, especially those students here who are not feeling like their English is going to be okay for an interview. Do you have any sort of tips for that?
Don't be afraid to talk to yourself in the mirror, and pre-record and use web conferencing to talk to yourself, and then play it back and go, if I was me, or if this person was looking to hire me, how would I actually present? Was I confident? Was I slouching? Was I, sort of like overly ambitious? Was I articulate? Could I explain myself? And do mock role plays. They're scary. And the reality is you don't know if you're going to get in front of one person, 3 people, or 5. And I would say during COVID, we went from sort of a leader interviewing an applicant to 6 leaders interviewing 30 applicants in a panel interview, almost like a Dragon's Den approach.
Oh no, like those group interviews from the mall.
Exactly.
Oh no.
I, as a leader, went, I would do if I was on the other side. And so, I sort of took the place of, if I was in that individual's shoes, I'd like a little care and empathy. And so,
and a heads up, you don't want to surprise somebody with that. That's, yeah.
But all to say is it could be a variety of interview styles that could happen, and you just need to be prepared. And so you would never go into an interview unprepared. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'll start there with interviews.
And unprepared looks like what?
I have people who don't look at me, even on video conferencing. I have people who sort of are turned here and I can hear them typing away. I have people who say, oh, sorry, I didn't get that. Could you repeat that? And you just sort of go, are you wasting my time? Like, don't waste my time. Like if you're really serious about this, then like be fully engaged in the conversation, because you're the one who needs the job and wants the job, not me. And so, and preparedness comes through in replies. And, you know, rather than go silent, it would be great for someone to say, you know, Maria, can you just give me a few minutes? Let me think about this. Yeah, take all the time you want. Like, I'd rather you that than just go radio silence. Yeah, Shannon, I don't know if you'd add anything there, but you can behaviorally see traits of disengagement or engagement through body language, through videos, or tapping. And sometimes you hear sort of this tap, this fidget. You got to be aware of that. Self-awareness is key.
So I mean, I think maybe this sounds like repetitive, but like certainly preparing for the interview in the sense that you know what company you're meeting with and what they do, I think is really important. One of the things that our recruiters ask is like, so like, based on what you've researched, like, what is your impression of what we do? And it is quite complex, but it is very interesting because a lot of people will just kind of use generic, like they've been maybe interviewing with multiple software companies, and they'll just kind of maybe generically describe what we do. And what the recruitment team is really looking for is, you know, maybe you looked at our social media, you can speak to some of the awards that we've won or some of the different blogs that we've recently posted and how you're excited to align. It aligns with some of the initiatives align with, you know, what interests you, and it really shows that you've done your research in the company. For those individuals who do have English as a second language, I can completely, you know, sympathize with you. I've been on the other end where some hiring managers have just said, like, I really just didn't understand anything that individual was saying. And that's really difficult. Like Maria said, please don't feel shy to ask them to slowly repeat the question, or slowly take your time to answer, and make sure that you understand the question before you answer. So, you know, there are all sorts of different things that you can research and look into, but I feel like just taking your time and really understanding the question before answering really helps. And again, things like, say, for example, if you've just come to Barrie or if there are other students from the other campuses joining, you know, getting out and networking and doing that volunteering and meeting other people certainly will help, you know, help your English skills a lot more, I believe, as well. If you could get any kind of volunteering experience, that's what I've heard from people who have come to Canada, and they really haven't had English as a first, maybe not even second or third language. Like maybe they're really, really junior to learning English. And I think if I'm not mistaken, I've heard this before, but English is one of the hardest languages to learn and to understand, because there are so many different, you know, words that we can use for different things. And so it's very complex, but take your time and really make sure you understand the question, and don't feel bad if, like Maria said, don't ask to repeat the question because you're not paying attention. But if you need them to repeat it or to verbalize it in a different way, like, could you maybe give me an example of that, or could you reword that in a different way? That there's nothing wrong with that either, but don't not pay attention and then ask to repeat the question, because that's not good.
That's awesome. And the only other thing that came to mind is, I say this is my favorite, but I say that tongue in cheek. So sometimes people say, oh, I checked you out on LinkedIn. And I say, oh, what did you find? And then I get nothing. Well, what was the point to that? Because now I don't understand what the connection is. So here I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe we're going to, you know, here's the kind of our common ground, and that's where we're going to start. And that's awesome. Because if you found common ground with the person who you know is interviewing, fantastic. Like, that's a great strategy. But if you're trying to find common ground as to, yeah, I checked you out, I was lurking you, and then I go, okay, great. Like, where do you want to start? What did you find? And there's nothing as a follow through, that's going to be a really bad way to start a first impression or to start an interview. But it happens.
Yes, it does. So I have one last question. Edson's actually asked a question, so we're just going to cover that one first. How do you answer a prospective employer who questions your lack of experience. So I think Edson means if I'm at an interview and the employer asks about your lack of experience. So as an employer, would you be concerned about a student having a lack of experience?
I would suggest that you say, yeah, I'm a co-op student. That's why I'm here. It's difficult when we have co-op students interviewing and managers questioning the experience, because there's a purpose why you're in the program and why it's a co-op program. Again, you really need to just kind of reroute the answer and draw on the experience that you do bring that is relevant to the job and how you're willing to learn. So that's something, if you're ever in an interview and they say, tell me about a time, or tell me about a software or anything, and you really don't have an example to draw on, that just be transparent. There's, but there's also maybe other things that you can pull in. You say, well, I don't really have an example for that, but I do, I did work on this one thing. And so you can kind of skirt around. You don't want to just say, well, no, I don't have the experience. You're right. And leave it at that. Like, you really need, as Maria said, to sell yourself. It is frustrating if employers are questioning your lack of experience, because again, that's why you're where you are, and that's why you're in the program that you're in. So I think most organizations have their kind of head wrapped around that, and are hopefully not really looking too much at that. I think for my organization, we really care more about what you've done since you've been in school. A lot of people go to school and they've never even had a part-time job before, like a Wendy's or, a Dairy Queen or something like that. And that's normal. And so again, once you're in school, I think networking and volunteering, and again, those opportunities really do start to snowball. I'm not like, I can speak from experience. You might volunteer for or have a certain job, and maybe it's a one-day job, and that turns into maybe meeting somebody, and then something else comes down. That's really truly how the world works. Maria's been at her company for a number of years, which is great. I'm sure she's had people who have left who she would love to work with again. That's what happens. And if she ever was looking to leave her company, she could probably phone up a few friends and get a job like that based on the connections and the networking that she's done over the years. So even if it's a one-day opportunity, you never know what could come from it. So I would say to definitely try to get out there and volunteer for things on campus, even if it's helping manage tours, or if they're doing open house and they need people to give people directions as they're coming through the door, hand out swag bags. There's all sorts of opportunities, and then you meet people, and then from there it really does, it could snowball. Maybe not right away, maybe not the next day, but it does come back.
That's awesome, Shannon. I think what I would add is, if someone says, tell me an example, know that it's also personal too. And so if you were a coach, or you were a referee, or you had, I don't know, you were assistant coach for soccer, or, that's where the important role of volunteerism, to Shannon's point, comes in is, one may think, well, I don't have that experience that I can put on my CV. Well, dig deep. You probably do. And if the interviewer is doing you any justice, they will take you through behavioral questions, so they actually get to know you, and then they get to know how you think, how you would approach a situation, because that's really what it comes down to. That's experience, but also a lot of it is how you react, how you would approach different situations, good, bad, or ugly, or tough ones or great ones, or how you would serve a client, or whatever the case is. But don't ever feel shy to give personal examples if work experience examples are not available. But that also means you need to push yourself into opportunities for volunteerism, so you can gain some of that experience and fall flat, scrape your knees a little bit, and then get yourself back up, and it'll all be good. But yeah, Shannon, that was awesome.
Yes. Okay. So there aren't any new questions from students. So I think we'll just finish up with this. And as a graduate of Georgian, is there any kind of last tips that you haven't already shared that you would love to share with future Georgian graduates? Shannon's going to go first.
Yeah, I'm someone who didn't stay in Barrie, and I miss it. And there are a lot of great things about Barrie and about that community. But if you have the opportunity to spread your wings and maybe do a co-op work term in the city, or go out west, or take a post-grad job in a new town and start from fresh, that's what I did. So I didn't have any friends or family down here. I had a job that I loved, and I had some coworkers that helped me put together my furniture. And now I'm very ingrained in the community down here, and I love Hamilton, and there are so many more opportunities. And I don't mean to knock Barrie, but in the corporate world, and and there's all sorts of different sectors. And so I would say, if you have an opportunity to look at co-ops or look at post-grad opportunities outside of Barrie, that take a leap, start fresh and see what that's like. And your friends are always going to be your friends. I still have my best friends, and we visit all the time, and we talk every day, and it's great. So it's been so nice growing up and having my roots in Barrie, but also kind of expanding. And it's not far. Like, I can still drive there, and be in there in an hour and a half. And so if you have that opportunity, if you're really struggling with co-ops, just know that there are opportunities in the GTA and out west for business.
I think what I would share is, so I graduated in 2001, and it was really important to me, as each of you think about, the couple of hours we've spent together today, where Shannon and I have invested in you. I need you to think, fast forward to when you are a graduate and how you invest in those who are coming in behind you. And so, I moved across the province a few times and still kept in touch with Georgian College in some facet, whether it was in person, whether it was virtually. But it was really important to me to continue to pay it back, because there was a lot of people, professors included, and, friends and colleagues included, that invested in me. And so I would just leave it with you to think about how you feel it would be important for you to, stay connected to Georgian, and for you to give back to Georgian. And this is just one example today.
Oops, and hopefully it was fun.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Hope so.
Oh, good.
I was just going to expand as part of the Alumni Association. Maria, thank you. Your Alumni Association, when you do graduate, is here to keep that connection alive. And we do have a lot of resources.
Yeah, they give you a nice little card for your wallet, and then you get discounts for insurance and hotels. So it's fantastic.
Oh, I can't. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. That's the card. I have it.
Yeah. So, and then of course, like Maria is part of our Alumni Association Executive Council, who kind of connects back, and we're always reaching out for mentorship opportunities, other volunteer opportunities, when the world opens up again, like different events. So definitely keep an eye out when you graduate for your alumni email, and reach out to me and your other alumni department friends to keep you connected. So just a little plug for me.
All right, well, I don't see any more questions, so I think we are safe in wrapping up today's session. So thank you to both of you for your time and all of your wisdom. There was so much that you shared. So there will be a recording sent. I will send it out by email, or you will, Erin.
So the recording will be sent out tomorrow via email. You receive an email from Zoom, just how you received your notification that you registered for the event. You'll receive the YouTube link in that email.
YouTube? You didn't say this is going on YouTube.
It's a very private channel. Don't worry.
I really don't like the sound of my voice when I hear it back on a voicemail or something. So
well, you're just lovely.
I won't be watching.
That's okay, but you'll be famous because there's all sorts of students that'll watch it.
That's too funny.
And both of you gave so much valuable and helpful advice, even for students that aren't doing the project. There was just so much value in this. Thank you so much.
Good luck to everybody. Yeah. So and feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I don't know about Maria, but I'm on LinkedIn. So
just a bit of advice: if you're going to connect with Shannon or Maria in LinkedIn, write a personal note and say that you were at this session, that you're a student at Georgian and what program you're in. Don't just connect with anonymous nothingness. So there should be the link coming tomorrow. And if you have no further questions, students, you are free to go. Thank you for attending.
you so
and for
much.
Thank
your
you.
attention. Bye, everyone.